Well, welcome everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thanks so much for coming. The food is so good here that I'm surprised you all are making your way into the presentations. I would probably linger a little longer for the snacks, but I'm very, very happy that you're here, and I'm also very happy that you all chose the 10:15 meeting because, of course, I won't be between you and lunch. So thanks so much for coming this morning. My name is Bradley Wilson. And are there any, obviously we have a lot of eaters in the room, but do we have any gardeners in the room? Yeah? Great. So reflecting on the talk here today, when we plant a seed, you never know what you're going to get. And I have two little girls. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. And over the past few years, we've started a little garden in the back of the house. And they've learned that sometimes when you plant a seed, it's kind of an experiment. Sometimes you have to tend it, and sometimes you don't get what you expect. In society, we've often come to the point, though, that we look specifically at the harvest. So we enjoy eating, but we don't necessarily always think about the work that goes into the experiments and the efforts of trying to actually put food on the table. And I've been teaching my girls that the work that I do, that Daddy does, is not just for today, right? And it's not just for us, all right? But rather it's for everybody, and it's forever. So the 21st Century Land Grant University, I think, shares a similar vision, all right? The work that we're doing is not just for today. It's not just for us in West Virginia and at the university, but it's for everybody, and it's forever. Today, I want to talk a little bit about some research that I've been doing. So I'm Dr. Bradley Wilson in geography. I'm an assistant professor. I've been at WVU for 7 years, and just this past year, I earned tenure. So y'all can't get rid of me now, as much as you might want to. I also want to thank Greg Dunway, who's here. There's perhaps no greater pressure than presenting before your dean. And of course also presenting before the Dean of Extension. We'll see just how far I extend. I was saying to Greg the other day that in a sense every faculty member at WVU is an extension agent. We just don't always have them share the same title. So I have a deep love for the people of West Virginia. I have deep roots in West Virginia. My grandmother is Lois Boone. She passed away a few years ago. And my grandfather, Lloyd Beckwith, are both native West Virginians. My mom's from West Virginia. Richwood is actually the original family homestead. So I trace my roots back deeply, multiple generations. I'm a Boone on my mother's side. And on my father's side, I'm a Wilson, and I grew up in New Jersey. So I'm one of those kids, who's found their way to West Virginia and has fallen in love with it. And I think the deep love that I have for the state of West Virginia is really translated deeply into the work that I do here. So I'm the director of the West Virginia Food Justice Laboratory. This is the name of the outfit that I head within the geography program. We have a ton of different students who are working with us, and I want to tell you a little bit about the work that we do today. So my love for the state and its people guides my research every single day. And as a scholar of food systems, I'm guided by this goal: to ensure that all people at all times in a given neighborhood, locality, region, all right, can gain and maintain access to affordable, nutritious, and healthy food. This is a great mission, for sure. And every single day I wake up and I try to make sure that the research that I'm doing, the service that I'm doing, the educational work that I'm doing aspires to this. Unfortunately, the statistics in the state of West Virginia and really across the country demonstrate that we're not necessarily meeting this goal, all right? And we require and really need folks who are working on the front lines to address this problem. And we're certainly not the only ones. 49 million people in the United States are food insecure, meaning they struggle to ensure that they can attain nutritious and healthy foods on a day-to-day basis. In West Virginia, 24% of the population is food insecure. 320,000 people a year, and actually each month, attend a food assistance agency to get access to food. All right? Over 175,000 children are eligible for the school nutrition programs. All right? These are really startling statistics, especially for the state of West Virginia. We have a 5.9% unemployment rate. In counties such as Clay, it's almost 14%. 35 counties in the state of West Virginia have unemployment rates that are nearing 10%. All right? And so food insecurity is a very big deal for families. Hunger is rampant, and across the Mountain State, there are numerous organizations that are working to try and feed families, get people back on their feet, and support them. But they need help from the university. All right? One time I was in southern West Virginia, and it's interesting the number of food pantries and emergency food assistance agencies that started after the 1970 floods. But they never disappeared. They had to stick around. And unemployment is a permanent flood. And a lot of people live in a permanent state of emergency. The director of the Facing Hunger Food Bank in southern West Virginia once said to me that the need for food banking initially is about an emergency, but some people live in a permanent state of emergency. And so we had to find ways of supporting families and addressing those issues. And that's exactly what the Food Justice Lab is all about. We're not just about trying to understand the problem. We're not just trying to address the statistics or generate new statistics, but actually to try and sow the seeds of tomorrow, right, through experimentation to try and solve the deeper problem of food insecurity in the state of West Virginia. It's about creativity. Here's a map that was created by by our team to address the question of food access in the state of West Virginia. So when we hear questions around issues of food insecurity, we often perhaps think about an individual, but we think about entire areas of the state in which folks don't even have access to a grocery store in which they can access high quality produce. Or other fresh vegetables or other healthy foods. And what I see in this map is areas of green, which are areas of higher access, being highly localized, in many cases around urban areas. But in many rural areas, we have incredibly low or very low food access. So how can we build capacity in West Virginia at the grassroots level, in local communities, across organizations to improve access to healthy foods? And the Food Justice Lab takes a geographical approach to this. All right? So we're trying to solve problems, and geographers generally approach problems in a very integrative way. I was just talking right beforehand with several folks in the audience about how geographers are part of a mother discipline in which there's lots of other disciplines that have emerged from geography over the past 200 years. But geographers often have a perception or conception of everything from the soil in which food is produced to the farming techniques, the farming techniques that are used by farmers, to the entire commodity chains that link producers and consumers of goods, to retail location, understanding where retail is located, right, to understanding, in fact, the behaviors of eaters. And in this particular case, geographers often use maps as a way to start a conversation. So it gets people at the same page and brings people together to talk about their shared issues. And in this case, this is my master's student, Thompson Gross, meeting with the director of the Wadestown Food Pantry in Monongalia County, actually doing a mapping exercise with every single one of the emergency food assistance agencies to understand service areas and the numbers of people that they support and address the questions of how to foster collaboration. And getting around a map and getting on the same page is something that geographers like to do, and it's something that we've been doing with the Food Justice Lab over the past 7 years. I'm a weirdo. I'll just say I'm a bit of a weirdo. I'm a bit of a weirdo when it comes to research because I'm often marrying action and activity and service directly and marrying it directly into the research process and weaving it together. I actually learned this in high school from an art teacher and design teacher who said, iterative experimentation is the basis of innovation. Right? Iterative experimentation is the basis of innovation. So if we want to come up with new ideas, if we want to be able to advance our society through new modes of programming and planning and policy making, we need to experiment. We need to get our hands dirty. We need to plant seeds and not know exactly where they're going to go. All right? And in a lot of controlled experiments, we try to over-organize what it is that we're going to do. But in my case, and with my lab, we are always searching for something deviant to do and are always working directly with communities who are often deviating from the norm to address massive problems. The norm is that we have food insecurity. So we want to deviate from that norm. What do we do to actually improve food security? So we're exploring all kinds of different ways in which communities are addressing that out in the field. When we first started our research in 2013, we had a very simple question. What are people doing in the county of Monongalia County to address the issue of hunger? We went out and we did interviews with 24 of the directors of food pantries, and we began to collect statistics. And what we found out is that the federal government statistics don't match up with the statistics that ladies who run food pantries are collecting. In particular, the federal government believed that, or presented statistics to the effect that around 15% of the population of Monongalia County was food insecure. But the folks at the food pantry said that roughly 20,000 people a month were attending food pantries, which is to say, in a county of around 90 to 100,000 people, a slightly larger percentage than we thought. So we said, well, how is this the federal government collecting statistics? How do we understand the problem of food insecurity? And we went down a rabbit hole with these folks, and we hosted a series of workshops and meetings to try to redefine what we meant by food security, to understand the role that food pantries and emergency food assistance agencies play in addressing the needs of families. And what came out of it was a series of questions to those 24 ladies. And they were all women, by the way, all women running those pantries. And they said, we need a resource base that could collect information that we generate, all right, and share it back with us so that we can create plans and work together to address the problem collectively rather than individually. This was an epiphany for us at the time, but it was also a call to action. All right? And so over the course of that next year, we developed FoodLink. And FoodLink is it's our baby. It's a product that you see online. You can go to foodlink.wvu.edu, and I'm going to take you through the site in a couple minutes. But it's more than a website. It's a labor of love. And I'll talk a little bit about, and what I want to talk about today is the experience. Miles Horton, also known as a radical hillbilly educator from Tennessee, he once said, you only learn from the experiences you learn from. And this is the basis of that concept of iterative experimentation. When you experiment, right, you don't just move on, you have to learn from the experiment. And so what I want to talk about today is what we learned from the experiment of creating FoodLink and trying to address the needs of a community that was addressing the problem of food insecurity. I'm going to take you through, this is the scary slide. Every faculty has a scary slide when you're giving a talk that's supposed to put the audience on notice. But here, I just mean to say I'm going to talk about 6 things. I want to talk about our beginnings. I want to talk about the statewide mapping project that we undertook. I want to talk about the development of the FoodLink online atlas that we created. I want to talk about how that atlas forced us into a statewide project of developing deep relationships with a range of different organizations across the state of West Virginia. It's a great problem to have. You start having to think about how to scale up. Talk a little bit about our statewide community food security assessment that we've done, and then to talk about where we're going with the development of the Nourishing Networks program, which we're going to start partnering just this year with West Virginia Extension agents across the state to conduct workshops in every county. So the story really begins the story really begins with Susan Kinney. I don't know if anybody here is from Monongalia County, but it wouldn't take long to meet Susan. She'd be really upset that she doesn't have a big smile. She usually has a big old smile on her face, but this was one of the best photos I have of Susan. We went out. Susan was the first person that we met when we started our study in 2013. I had 2 master's students who were working with me on a project just to get to know the folks who are doing work on the front lines of addressing hunger in West Virginia. And Susan Kinney blew my mind. I don't know how else to put it. I left that meeting absolutely astounded at the work that people are doing invisibly. I mean, we do charitable giving and we give to address hunger, but to understand what folks do to address that problem at the pantry level. They serve over 400 people a month on a shoestring, and they do it with dignity. They provide dignity. They do it in a way that's dignified, and they are tireless. They mobilize at her pantry, St. Ursula's, 20 people twice a month to come and assist. And one of the folks that I met there, a woman by the name of Gracie, grew up on Holler 8 in Scotts Run. And she said, the reason why I come back every Wednesday that we have time to serve is that when I was 8 years old, there was a problem down at the mine, and my mom left me at home, and luckily some neighbors smelled the fire, but our house was engulfed in flames, and I was rescued. But the problem is that once you're rescued, you then have to pick up the entire, you have to pick up your life, pick your life back up again. And so Gracie said from a very young age, I saw the role that humanitarian relief plays in people's lives because it was affected by me. Gracie's 80 years old, and she's still working to try to support her family. And going back again to that sense of community in the state of West Virginia, this project has introduced that to me and reinforced it over and over and over again. And it's important that the university support those folks who are doing that work. Yes?
Perhaps this is not part of your discussion today, but you said something there that caught my eye. It was she operates on a shoestring, and all of these things do. Yes, we were talking at breakfast.
Yes.
And so, where's the linkage to the finances?
Yes.
Who's helping you with the linkage to the finances that we need to raise these things up to where they can be more effective?
Yeah.
In reach more?
Yeah, one of the things, again, coming out of that meeting, thank you so much for that question, it's a really important one, was the degree to which a small pantry as a nonprofit, even running out of a church, which 85% of food pantries run out of churches in the state of West Virginia, operate like small businesses. Not in the sense that they're out for profit, but in the sense that they have to have very strict accounting because they want to be able to provide food assistance every single month untiringly. And though, they'll say, Jesus will provide, right? The ladies who actually run those pantries are hawks on accounting. And they know how to manage those small businesses, and they know how to do supply chain management. And they know, it's odd, I would love to have Susan Kinney come to the business school and explain how she runs a pantry feeding 400 people a month. Be a powerful, teaching opportunity to see how someone does that. So to answer your question, Nourishing Networks is the project that we're working on is going to be addressing some of those questions around how do we do financial literacy for folks who are running these kinds of programs, but also how do we do financial literacy, and this is something that's come up on numerous occasions, whether it's DHR, for families who are struggling, right, and are low income. Nourishing Networks becomes a mechanism through the workshops that we host to identify strategies to improve people's lives, whether that be in the humanitarian side or whether that be specifically families who are confronting food insecurity. Hopefully we'll come back and give the fuller picture at the end, and I'll come back to that question again. So this project, these conversations with the folks at the Food and Hunger Committee in Monongalia County hurled us into a huge question, which is, what is happening in West Virginia? I mean, if Monongalia County is the shining star of West Virginia at 5% unemployment at this time, right? And we have this much food insecurity in Monongalia County, what is it like elsewhere? And so we launched a statewide project, and this map I use often. It looks like something we just sort of jokingly, like we say when we do our mapping projects, it's just beep boop bop boop beep boop bop, and boom, comes out a map. But what I want to express to you is this is the work of 14 students working tirelessly to call every single retailer in the state of West Virginia, to call every single food assistance agency in the state of West Virginia and survey them. So over 3,000 points that are on this map represent a 10 to 15-minute call, and in some cases, 45 minutes to an hour as a local retailer or a lady running a food pantry unloads on you the problems that they're facing because you're talking to them and you're talking to them about something that's meaningful. So 14 students over 2 years making these calls, a lot of summer work. We almost set up a call center in my laboratory. And we had 6 or 7 phones, and people just called and called and called and called and called. Called down to Mingo County. Where are you located? I see you on the list, but I don't know where you are. Oh, we're 10 miles down Route 10, and right after the Quickie Mart is where we are. And so we had students who would fill in these data entry forms. They'd locate them and drop a point on Google Maps, get a latitude and longitude point. Sometimes they'd have to actually use the Google Driving format to see if they could actually see the agency. And then we created a database, again, of around 3,000 points. The federal government does not actually know for sure where these places are. We are the only outfit in the country that actually has point data that is accurate to the foot as to where every assistance agency is located, as to where every retailer that accepts SNAP and WIC is located. So when we do our analyses, as I'll talk about a little later, we know for sure that the places are where they're supposed to be, and we know what those places carry. So although it might be SNAP, you might have a location that accepts SNAP benefits, the use of food stamps. But we did a survey to actually ask them, do you carry fresh produce? Do you carry X, Y, and Z nutritionally sufficient items? All right, and those go into our analyses. But analysis is for is a particular product. All right, but these ladies initially they weren't interested in an analysis. They weren't interested in theoretical and conceptual models. They weren't interested in modeling. All right, which is often where folks like us go, who are in academia. They wanted a tool that they could use. All right, if you want to do research and build trust and a sense of responsibility in a community, you better deliver something. One of the greatest moments in my entire experience is that in 2015, Suzanne Kinney invited me out to give a presentation to the board of her food pantry. And at the beginning of it, she said, I really love Bradley and FoodLink because they came back. A lot of times researchers go out to a community, we do research, and then we leave, but we don't come back. All right? And she said, that gave me trust that Bradley's somebody I want to work with, and that the Food Justice Lab is somebody that we want to work with. So I want to show you what generates trust. All right? So our FoodLink website is the aggregation of countless hours of work. We have a series of different tools that we've been creating over the past few years. The first here is our map of services. And hopefully we'll get this baby to work pretty quick. So when you go on, you can select a county. Anybody have a county they want to see? Jackson County. Right. All right. So here's Jackson County. Ooh, my goodness. My apologies. Thank you for saying something. You guys are so quiet. You're just like my students. You're very patient. Sorry, we're competing here. So, all right, if you go down here to Jackson County. All right, comes right up, and you can scroll through, you can roll over, you can identify where the DHHR office, where the WIC office is. You can identify anywhere you can get a hot meal. All right. In the case of Jackson County, there is no hot meal program. Food pantries, we have a number there. Calvary United Methodist, I can click here. It'll take me directly to that place, and I can click on it and get everything from the hours of operation, when they are actually open, when you can go, what the prerequisites are to get access to food. This site is used by the Coalition for the Homeless. This site's used by the food banks. This site is used by social workers across the state to help low-income families that are struggling identify where they can get access to resources. Again, going all the way back to Susan Kinney and the folks in Monongalia County, we created a resource they could use, and they could use every day. Our site gets around 1,000. It has 1,000 users a month, different users a month. So this is a site that's being used and used well. Coming out of that, though, and I can go into more depth here. We also created county profiles, which draw upon a whole range of data and information. Keep going past Jackson. So we aggregated all the information. We're the most comprehensive food insecurity data manager for a state in the country. So we have drawn together federal assistance data, our data, data from the USDA, data from the schools. And so we created these county profiles, which are now being used by extension agents. They're being used by Our Children, Our Future campaign. They're being used by Try This, which is another organization in the state. Lots of different community-based organizations are using these as a basis to start conversations about what they can do to help. And then it has a food access map for each county. It has the location of the retailers. It has a lot of really important information. So again, going back to the presentation here.
So where do you, where has this been advertised? Because, it seems like to me, one of the challenges is to get this tool out there where people who need it know that it's available.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we did a postcard campaign. We've been covered by NPR at the national level. We've been on West Virginia Public Radio. We have a outreach through the food banks. So we are actually sponsors, collaborators and partners with each of those. The way that people learn about us, if we were thinking about a guerrilla marketing campaign, our guerrilla marketing campaign works through the agencies and the organizations that are actually on the front lines through partnerships with them. Again, when you develop the kinds of trusting relationships that we have with these organizations, they feel like they can trust to share it with others, and they feel a part of it. So let me just jump ahead. The students that have been involved, again, the 14 students I've talked about, are Ph.D. students, master's students, and undergraduate students. Working on the Food Link project, we've had 3 Fulbright research fellows. These are students, there's the first 3 in the past 20 years at WVU. A Rhodes finalist right here, that's Dylan Muley Alexander. You'll be voting for him in West Virginia in 20 years for governor. Really terrific, a foundation scholar who worked with us. Boren Fellows who have worked with us. These are very prestigious awards. And so we attract some of the best and brightest students to work with the Food Link Project. And right there in the middle is a student who started working with me as a freshman. Her name is Amanda Marple, and this spring she'll be finishing her master's degree in the geography program and is going to be continuing work on another project at the Food Justice Lab called Firsthand Coffee. And of course, there's Gordon, who's always been an advocate and is a great megaphone for anything WVU, but he's been a wonderful supporter of FoodLink. This is where our advertising is, all right? Deepening partnerships. We talk about WVU and the role of WVU in the state. This is really where the rubber meets the road. Pre-tenure, you know, when you're trying to get tenure at WVU or any Research One university, you have to watch your time and how you spend it. You got to publish or perish. You know, you got to win research grants. I was very lucky to manage my time or lose myself, I guess, in some way, shape, or form, and to partner with the right people that enabled me to really travel across the state of West Virginia to get to know folks. In fact, talking last night with Betty here from the hosting committee, who works as a board member with the Coalition of Homeless, we've spent time in Huntington and have known folks there, and they call us and they call on us because we are able to provide information that they need and support the work that they do. This is an image here of the Huntington mission. This here is the current director of the the Mountaineer Food Bank, Chad Morrison, and we were just invited to start serving on the board of the food bank. Man-a-meal right there, Gene Simpson, one of the most amazing human beings that I've ever met. And here's Rock, a retired policeman who runs a food pantry in Charleston and is quite a colorful character. And to his left is Joshua Lones, who is my partner in crime, a Ph.D. student in geography. He'll be finishing his Ph.D. in the fall of this year. Here are just some of our partners and some of the most important ones. Talk about a megaphone for West Virginia University. Kim Tiemann from the Benedum Foundation was an early supporter of our work and introduced us to many of these folks. I'm not going to go through each one. I'd love to. I refer to this as my NASCAR. Sort of like every single person that we work with is on the car. But some really important groups of folks who we work with across the state of West Virginia, and a lot of funders who have taken us really seriously and plowed and really helped us plow the field. So deepening partnerships is one thing that takes a lot of time. That's what I want to express to you here. These things take a lot of time. Often, again, I think it's something that has to be invested in. And if we really want to grow the reputation of WVU around the state even more as a service provider, we need to empower faculty and students to take that time to build those relationships and those relationships of trust. And you have to show up and you have to come back. So we've come back again and again. We've published a website that folks care about, but they need analysis too. They need more than points on a map, all right? And so in 2005, we launched a study of the data that we had been collecting, all right? We have access to charitable food assistance data. We have access to, that no one else has. We have access to the retail landscape and understand that. We have an understanding of the statistics on food insecurity that we'd collected. So we actually were funded by the USDA to conduct a food security assessment for the state of West Virginia, and we wrote a comprehensive 80-page report back to the USDA that is now being used as a basis for statewide planning and assistance. So those relationships get you data, all right, as well as friends. And so we have built, as I said before, the most comprehensive food security and food access database in the country. There's really no other organization that has created a database that is as quick to use and functional in addressing immediate need. We've collected information on everything from the schools program to food banks to the retail environment, and we're even beginning to collect information on things like hunting and gardening and fishing and resources for families that do this. It's interesting, as opposed to living in New Jersey and growing up in New Jersey in an urban context, to living in a rural context, because as we learned for many families in West Virginia, putting away 2 deer for the winter is a significant food security strategy. All right, and so what we did with this report is, rather than focus on the negative statistics, rather than focusing on the problem only, we actually looked at the strategies that various groups are using across the state to actually improve food security, and emphasizing those positive aspects of what we're doing. And what we're doing is nationally renowned. I want to stress to this group that West Virginia has the highest participation rate in breakfast and lunch in the country because the schools have embraced progressive policy around making sure our kids are fed, right? 16 million children across the country are food insecure, right? 1 in 5 kids. And in West Virginia, we're meeting the needs of those children. It's an amazing, amazing, amazing thing. All right, so we want to represent the positive, not just highlight the problem. All right? Here's just a couple things from the report I'll just throw out here. Here's an image of a map of the SNAP and WIC retailer distribution, broken down by different store type. One thing that we've noticed over the past decade in West Virginia is what I refer to as the dollar store colonization of the state. There are dollar stores in every single place throughout the state, and those are owned primarily by Dollar General and Family Dollar, but those are actually now the same company. They've merged over the past 2 years. So we have small box retailers, 557 small box retailers, 64 big box retailers. These are your Walmarts, which, as we learned this year in McDowell County, sometimes they cut and run. They do close their stores, which create the problem of a food desert, or exacerbate it. 1,000 convenience stores and 334 grocery stores. And grocery stores are those that carry just about everything. Yes? Okay, thanks. So I wanted to point this out because one thing that we don't often think about for most of us who live in an urban area is that we go to a Kroger or maybe a Giant Eagle or something like that. But the vast majority of convenience stores and grocery stores are owned by independent families. They're family-run businesses. They're not affiliated with the larger companies. And so one of the things that we've been talking about across the state is how can we support family-owned stores to not close? Because these are folks who are often committed to trying to stay in place over a long period of time. So Retailers Association is one that we've been talking with. Charitable landscape, again, we're able to map and understand the charitable landscape as well. We're the first to actually have a number on the total amount of money that West Virginia raises each year to run these programs to serve 300,000 people a month. We raise around $11 million. $11 million a year to run those programs. So that gives you a conception of a crazy amount of work that goes into this. And we have over 7,000 volunteers in the state of West Virginia who are serving this network as well. All right, sometimes 10 to 15 hours a month. Moving forward, all right, we built this database. We have a community food security assessment for the state of West Virginia. Now what? All right, and this past year we said we want to deepen these partnerships and deepen this work even further. And so what we've done is we've developed a new program called Nourishing Networks. It's a workshop-based program that we get an invitation from a group in a county or in a city or in a town to come and conduct a planning exercise with them. We draw on our data. We get an inclusive group of people together, from farmers to food pantry directors to DHHR representatives to social workers, all right? And we invite them to work across their differences. One thing that we've seen over the past year, 2 years, and 3 years in West Virginia is that you have really different groups. Nutritionists are trained in nutrition and diet. You have social workers who are working on issues addressing social services. You've got farmers who are thinking about their bottom line and having a viable farm, right? You've got a food pantry director that's thinking about their charity. You've got government officials who are thinking about meeting specific policy goals. So how do we get all of those folks in the room, all right, and facilitate a conversation, all right? How do you get all those different groups of people together at the table to create a plan that they can work on together, all right, to advance better access to healthy food? And so the Nourishing Networks program, and we've run one statewide workshop. We had 75 people come up to the workshop. We had the directors of both food banks. We had the director of WIC in West Virginia come. And it was an amazing experience. In the course of 8 hours, they not only did an assessment of a county, but they actually created a plan to address the healthy food access problems that they had identified. And so what we're doing now is we're taking this on the road. We're like a circus, all right? We take a group of folks to a county, we organize, we advertise, and we host with funds that we've raised from the USDA, and very hopefully in the next week or so we'll hear from the Benedum Foundation again to run this for 2 more years and to expand to 9 counties to develop actual implementable plans and foster inclusive organizing, right? Community organizing across these different groups to begin addressing the deep problem. So these are images from the workshop that we had before. We blow up, we create 4-foot maps, all right? And then we get people together talking about this stuff. So what we want to do is get people together at the table, all right? And we need to bring various groups of people together to address the needs that are confronting the state. I think that we have done a great job, and my team has done a very good job, and what we're perhaps the most proud of is integrating the conventional research, deep community partnerships, tools that people can actually use, all right, to innovate and create new ways of addressing the problem of food insecurity in the state of West Virginia. Thanks so much for your time.